All right. Well, it is 10:15, so I suppose we should go on and get started. Good morning, everybody. Happy Monday and happy November as well. Thank you all for tuning in to this week's weather briefing on this Monday, November 1st, 2021. I'm pleased to welcome AccuWeather's senior meteorologist, Mike Dole, to give this week's weather briefing. And Mike, I will stop my screen share and let you have the floor, sir. Take it away.
All right. Thank you very much, Chris. Appreciate it. And go ahead and share my screen. There we go. So wanted to start off with what it appears to be a new record warm October for State College. It's based on the now data, 59.4. Is the average, which beats the record by 0.2 degrees. Certainly, I'm a fan. I was telling Chris, I'm a fan of warm weather. The more winter gets delayed, the happier I am, at least as far as that's concerned. But things are changing, and we'll get into that here in a little bit. And then looking at the last 30 days, it's obviously been, it seems like it was a fairly wet October, although in reality, it was near normal. So this is, at least around here. So this is the percent of normal precipitation over the last 30 days, basically covers the entire month of October. Thankfully, Central and Northern California got quite a bit of rain, and they desperately needed it. It's really helped to basically, for all intents and purposes, and the fire season, and some impressive rainfall amounts that they had a little more than a week ago. And that wet weather spread across Idaho and into the Northern Rockies and then Northern Plains. Really wet in the Midwest, and parts of the Northeast were well above normal with precipitation as well. Still rather parched though across the Southern Rockies and Southern High Plains. They could definitely use some rain, but overall, some areas that really needed the rain got it. And so we'll talk a little bit more about what we can expect here coming up over the next week to 10 days across the United States and here in the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast. Did get some snow though across parts of the plains overnight. So this is from the NORRIS data covering so this is the last 6-hour snow analysis ending at 12Z this morning. Can zoom in, see parts of Nebraska and Wyoming. Got anywhere between an inch to, looks like close to 4 inches of snow per analysis. Not sure a whole lot of this was able to stick to the ground. Temperatures were at or a little bit above freezing during much of the time that this was falling. But this is their first accumulating snow of the season, and there's going to be some parts of the Appalachians that get their first accumulating snow, especially the higher elevations of West Virginia coming up over the next couple of days, and also some lake effect snow is expected. Already had some actually downwind of Lake Superior overnight, and then downwind of Erie, Ontario, and Huron, expecting to get some snow as well. So taking a look at satellite. So I always like to look at the Pacific initially, kind of see, get an overview of what's going on across the Northern Pacific and how things are tracking across that region and then into the United States. There's one low you can see spinning off the northwest coast. That's bringing some rain, starting to move into the Pacific Northwest coast. Will be some heavy rain across parts of British Columbia, but you can see that the flow aloft is taking the cloudiness across the Gulf of Alaska. So there is a huge blocking ridge across Western Canada, and that pattern is expected to continue. You can see upper low across Eastern Canada, and this is going to help drive some colder air into the northern U.S., the Great Lakes, and eventually Northeast, and actually spreading into the southeast United States. So this is going to be the first significant shot of colder air that the Northeast will have seen in quite some time, probably since March or April. So, and that'll bring enough colder air to set up some lake snows and some snows across the Appalachians. Taking a look at water vapor for good chunk of North America, you can see large area of low pressure in the upper levels spinning across Eastern Canada, and you can see the evidence of our blocking ridge, and the source region of our cold air mass is really across the Arctic region, although it's a little bit early for this to have a huge impact, at least in terms of some really cold air. If this was January or February, we'd be looking at a completely different situation. But you can see in the source region, you see it's rather cold in northern Canada. But again, this will modify quite a bit simply because it's not going to be moving over a significant snowpack, especially across southern Canada and the northern U.S. The lake temperatures are still rather warm. You could see winds off the lake, and it's in the mid 40s across parts of Ontario. You get farther away from the lakes, and it's in the 30s. So, and bit chilly start to the day here locally. It's currently 46 with a wind around 9 knots. So especially open areas, probably doesn't feel all that nice early this morning, but still gusty across parts of Pennsylvania, Maryland, the Delmarva. So even though it's in the 50s, probably doesn't feel too comfortable this morning. Some gusty winds across parts of the Northeast as well. So taking a look at radar, I mentioned the system that's approaching the Northwest, also have some more rain falling across Northern California. Again, any rain they get, as long as it's not too much and enough to cause flooding, mudslides, things like that, any rain they get is going to be beneficial. And hopefully as the wet season goes on, we'll get some good rains across Southern California, which from time to time we may see, and I'll get a little bit into the long range later on. I'll talk about AccuWeather's winter forecast here coming up. But taking a look at the analysis from the ECMWF, the initialization from the 0Z run overnight, again, kind of focused on the northern Pacific and East Asia. You can see our Omega block across Western Canada. And again, the source region of this cold air is Arctic in nature, but again, very early in the season. So a lot of modification occurring as the air passes over what's really a lack of snow cover across southern Canada and the northern U.S. So, but it's active and is expected to be pretty active here over the next week or so. Several systems are going to be tracking through Eastern Asia and across the Northern Pacific as we get through later in the week. And lots of moisture going to be moving into the Pacific Northwest and Western Canada. So they're looking at the potential for quite a bit of rain and also some really heavy mountain snow. Some ski resorts in California, as a result of the snows that they got, have opened. And I imagine if they're not already, some ski resorts in southern British Columbia and the Cascades of Washington and Oregon, if they're not open already, they should have a chance to open here as we get later into this week. So as the blocking pattern breaks down, we'll still be in a general northwest flow across the northeast, but at least based on the European deterministic, that changes as ridging builds in response to these deeper troughs in the northeast Pacific, some ridging across the central U.S. eventually that may build into the eastern United States. So while we're going to be entering a period of some cooler weather that may not last, although once we get rid of this blocking, though, the pattern looks like it becomes fairly transient. I had a bunch of loops up, but for some reason they went away. So, let's focus on the United States here. So as I mentioned, going to have some troughiness across the Northeast. And interestingly enough, I showed the radar earlier, and there is some rain and snow going on in the Central Plains. But this system is going to be moving through the Ohio Valley and into parts of the Mid-Atlantic. So there is the possibility, as we get an injection of some cold air, that there'll be enough cold air for some snow across the Appalachians, probably starting tonight. The snow levels will be, I imagine, probably down to at least a couple thousand feet, maybe even lower than that. So it wouldn't be surprised, even in the southern Laurels, there's a little bit of snow. Going to be too warm across southern and southeast Pennsylvania for snow. That's going to be a rain event for those areas. But we were talking internally at AccuWeather earlier this morning, that place like Snowshoe, West Virginia, may end up getting a few inches of snow out of this. So winter is coming, albeit the snowy weather is delayed. And also you can see there's going to be some lake effect snows, some colder air moves over the relatively warm lakes. It's always tricky this time of year when we're talking about an early season lake snow, given how warm October was. It's the lake waters are really warm, so areas closer to the lake probably be primarily rain. You'll have to go farther inland before you get to some snow. So it's tricky forecasting of where's that line between where it's going to be rain versus snow. So pretty low 850 temperatures expected. Let me pull the prog here for 850 temperatures. And again, this is some of the coldest air that we'll have seen in quite a while, and not as cold as what we could potentially experience a few months from now. And that'll stay with us for a little bit, but you can see the evidence of warmer air starting to build back across the plains, and eventually that'll push into the eastern United States with time. So we'll start to warm up a little bit as we head toward next weekend, and possibility we could see return to above normal temperatures perhaps next week. But we'll see. This is the deterministic, so I don't usually put a whole lot of weight in the extended with deterministic runs. But I guess we could pull up the 0Z EPS from the ECMWF. And we'll pull up the height anomalies. So there is, and why is this old? Well, that's not good. All right, well, I guess I'm gonna have to open up a ticket because our EPS internally is not working. So, but anyway, that's what we're looking at. So as far as precipitation prospects locally, could we see some flakes? I wouldn't be completely surprised if we saw a few flakes, maybe even Tuesday night. The one thing I've noticed, I've been here in central Pennsylvania for 8 years. I'm not a Penn State grad, by the way. I'm a Purdue grad from 1997. I've worked in Kansas, Illinois, and Pennsylvania. This is my third job. I like Pennsylvania a lot more than the other two. But one thing I've noticed in my years here, that guidance tends to do poorly with precipitation, especially with the snow showers coming off the lakes. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's at least some rain showers Tuesday night. Maybe there's a few flakes, that maybe enough to at least just remind us that the colder season is coming. But again, the gloomy days of fall, the chilly days are here, at least looks like temporarily. The interesting thing, another thing we talked about internally, our daily map discussions, and recently with our long range team, and we've already seen this a couple of times. We've had most recently nor'easter that developed. Obviously no cold air to tap into, but we saw a pretty significant wind and rain event. And looking at the SSTs, the anomalies, I should say, very, very warm water off the mid-Atlantic and New England coasts. So this has us concerned that we could see more of those storms develop, at least the rest of the fall, maybe into early winter. The only question is there going to be any cold air present, but to bring any meaningful snows? It's tough to tell, but just given the fact that it's so warm, the waters are so warm, this kind of sets a stage where we get an extratropical cyclone develop and intensify pretty rapidly, just given the anomalous warm off the coast. Very, very warm over Hudson Bay. The other interesting aspect is the La Nina that is present. You can see the colder anomalies across the equatorial Pacific. very anomalous cold water across the Gulf of Alaska. You can see a pocket of warmth here south of the Aleutians. Kind of, you can see there's a pretty good gradient. So this should set up, and we've seen it. This should set up a pretty active pattern across the northern Pacific, and with the lack of any decent blocking, that outside of what we're seeing now, and we're going to be seeing this week, this at least over the next few weeks, this should set up a pattern that a lot of our storms are going to be more Pacific in nature, and I suspect that we're probably not going to see any significant snows across the Mid-Atlantic, at least not. I don't think this month. We've been talking about potential for a more of a backloaded winter across the Northeast, but we'll see how that evolves. But in the shorter term, I think we'll be really hard pressed to get any significant precipitation, and which is fine. It's been rather wet. The ground's really damp, so a chance for it to dry out a little bit. But looks like football, Penn State and Maryland looks dry in College Park. I believe they're at Maryland this week. So dry weather for the football game, at least at this point. Maybe some clouds, but otherwise should be some okay weather. Looks like again, pretty wet across the Pacific Northwest coming up, and perhaps getting some rain, additional rain later on across parts of California where they could need it. And let me pull here. I don't know if it's logged me out. Nope, didn't. So, this is our overall winter forecast for December 2021 through February. We're calling for above normal temperatures across much of the West, below normal parts of the Midwest, the central and northern plains, generally above average across the Southeast, parts of the Mid-Atlantic. Calling for near normal across central Pennsylvania, although confidence is low on that. Although really, even if say our temperature departure ends up being +1 during those 3 months, I mean, really in actuality, it probably will seem like it was a chilly winter. That makes sense considering the how mild our winters have been, and the trend that they are getting warmer. So +1 is almost going to be like normal, or even slightly below normal, if that makes sense. So in terms of the difference between last winter and this winter, colder compared to last winter across the north, warmer in the southeast, although not significantly so. But anyway, precipitation near or above normal precipitation for central Pennsylvania. We do have drier than normal for much of the central southern California, although we were discussing last week, we may chop off this northern part and go with closer to near normal across Central California. It all depends. We are expecting La Nina. Obviously, we're in La Nina now, and expecting that to continue through this winter and even into spring. Obviously, that typically means the storm track is biased toward Northern California and into the Pacific Northwest. That's not always the case. If you recall, we had, I think it was the winter 15-16. I think that was the super El Nino. And typically then you get wetter than normal rains across California. Wasn't the case that year. Then it was the following year where we went to a La Nina, and California had an extremely wet winter, even in the Southern California. So El Ninos and or Enso as a whole, you think there's typical outcomes. That doesn't always work. Often what you have to look at is tropical forcing across the Indian Ocean basin that can actually, and really the Western Pacific, that can often drive what happens across the Western United States and downstream across North America. So that could have an impact on whether or not we have a La Nina that's more typical. So it'll be interesting to see how that pans out. Precipitation change, our forecast versus last year, drier than it was last winter. We're expecting across the Southeast, some pockets of wetter than last year, Northern Rockies, Central and Southern Rockies, Great Lakes, perhaps not even as wet, even with La Nina across the Pacific Northwest. And, we'll have to see if we have to make any adjustments as we go forward across California. So, so far they're getting, their fair share of precip, and we'll see if that continues. So, kind of looking at, see if I can get this a little bit larger. So this is kind of our thinking with analogs and how we weight them and the overall thinking. So 08, 09, 13 and 14, 17, 18, 11 and 12 are really the more recent analogs that we're more heavily weighting for this forecast. And again, given climate change, it's really difficult to incorporate analogs from 30 years ago or beyond, just because it's not the same climate as it was back then. So always leery about having analogs going back that far, although we do have them in this case, but we don't have them weighted very high. Snow outlook, October through April. Our latest thinking is above normal snowfall across the Midwest, Great Lakes, and New England. Close to normal snowfall here in central Pennsylvania. There are, again, as I pointed out, with how warm the SSTs are compared to normal off the mid-Atlantic and Northeast coast. All it takes is one big storm, and there are risks of that because the waters are above normal. So we'll see if we can get at least one big early season storm, but obviously then it could end up being a bust, and there's nothing significant. So I know, again, me personally, I'm not a big snow lover. Some of you might want big snows, but living here in State College, I learned that we often get robbed on those big snow events. So we'll see. It's always interesting to look at a longer range forecast, and it's not easy to do. There's so much involved in trying to come up with a long range forecast, especially out seasonal. A lot of research has been done, especially now with machine learning and AI, building statistical models to try to increase the accuracy of seasonal and sub-seasonal forecasts. It's actually something I'm very, very interested in it. Looking more of from a statistical standpoint. So I think that really that's about all I wanted to cover. I guess I'll pull up the latest Enso forecast from IRI. You can see most of the ensembles are showing a negative Enso or La Nina, again going through the winter and at least into spring. You know, some members though are indicating this is going to be rather short-lived, but the consensus, at least for most of the models, is we'll be in a La Nina pattern through the winter and likely into spring of next year. So, and that's all I have.
All right, thank you very much, Mike, for that forecast discussion. There are still some folks watching on YouTube, I think. I am keeping an eye on YouTube chat, so if any of you watching us on a bit of a delay have any questions, do go on and pop those in chat. I'll give you a couple of extra seconds to type those out since, like I said, YouTube is a little bit delayed. And of course, those of you on Zoom, welcome to ask any questions here in the Zoom chat as well. Yeah, see, now I'm with Marissa on this one. I want the snow.
I mentioned, you know, I'm not a big fan of snow. The older I get, the less I like winter. But if we have seasons for a reason. So if we get a monster season and, you know, we end up with 70 inches of snow, I'm fine with that. I'm of the go big or go home mentality when it comes to winter. You know, getting I've termed getting quarter inched to death for 4 months is not my ideal winter. Let's you know, let's have it. Let's just get pounded and then melt by early March, and then the golf courses are open by the end of March. That's my perfect winter. And last winter was actually was sort of the perfect. It started. We had our first snow was a rather substantial storm toward the middle of December, and we had snow through February. And then by the time March hit, you know, we progressed fairly normally into spring. So that's how I think of winter. Let's just 3 months of it and then be done. The year before that, we had a really cold April and May, and that was the start of the pandemic. And that was awful.
Yeah, that was my sister's. Oh no, she wasn't in college yet. No, that was this year. No, I'm off by a year. Yeah, no, we have so we students run just an unofficial little winter bingo for State College. You know, just can we get 5 in a column of just assorted weather events to happen? Our free space on the bingo board, we give ourselves a free space every year, is trace of snow at the Walker Building because it happens all the time.
It seems that way. Yeah, we get tenth of an inch here, quarter inch there.
A little bit of sleet just to keep everybody on their toes.
Yeah, some freezing drizzle. Yeah. I mentioned I worked in Kansas. I lived in Kansas for 8 years, and it was that was freezing drizzle central. We had a lot of events like that, and in that part of the country, they obviously don't get a frequent number of winter events, so they don't have the equipment really to deal with it. So they'll basically get the interstates and the state roads. They focus on those. Otherwise, the neighborhood streets, even the main thoroughfares through Wichita, they just don't have the resources to ice or de-ice those and make them drivable. So it was awful trying to navigate the roads in Kansas during a winter storm.
Yeah, that's how it is in my part of North Carolina. All right, I am not seeing any further questions in the Zoom chat or on YouTube, so I guess we can leave things here. Mike, thank you so much once again.
You're welcome. Glad to participate. Thanks for having me.
Of course. This weather briefing is live streamed on YouTube, has been live streamed for the past 40 or so minutes. And you can find it recorded there if you'd like to go back and play it back at a later date. Thank you all for joining us this week. Next week, we will be virtual again, and I am excited to welcome back Uniper Global Commodities Senior Meteorologist Jess Torpy, who will be joining us from Dusseldorf, Germany. You may recall he was our first international presenter last semester, and I'm excited to announce that he will be joining us once again next week. That'll be at the same time, same place, 10:15 a.m. Eastern, and I look forward to seeing all of you next week. Have a great week, everybody.